The night smelled like rain before it had even fallen, the air thick with that metallic tension that comes before a storm. And I knew I should have locked the doors earlier. I always did. I always locked them, double-checked them, whispered my own version of a prayer over the locks like some private ritual. But tonight had been different. Too late from the moment I left the office. Too late from the drinks I lingered over with friends. Too late from the quiet longing I felt in the pit of my chest. The ache I tried to ignore while walking past the neon lights of the city that never really sleeps. By the time I climbed the stairs to my apartment, it was already too late. The front door was slightly ajar. Not forced open, no splintered wood, no shattered glass, but ajar. As if someone had brushed against it lightly, testing it, leaving a mark only careful eyes would notice. My heart sank into my stomach like a stone as I froze, hand hovering over the deadbolt. For a moment, I told myself it was just my imagination, that maybe I'd forgotten to lock it in my haste. But instinct doesn't lie, not when it thrums in your chest like a live wire. I whispered Jonah's name softly, as if calling him would summon him through the thin walls and into my apartment. No response. Of course he wasn't here. I was alone. The apartment smelled faintly of jasmine and dust, kind of smell that had once felt like comfort but now felt like a warning. My gaze swept the living room, the couch with its crumpled blanket, the coffee table with an empty mug still warm from hours ago. And then I saw it, a small, deliberate movement in the corner of my eye. I spun, heart hammering. Nothing, but the sensation remained. That prickling awareness of being watched. The kind of feeling that crawls along your spine and refuses to leave. I locked the door properly this time. Double-checked the chain. Pressed my forehead to the cool wood and tried to breathe. "It's nothing," I whispered to myself, repeating it over and over like a mantra. Nothing is here. But something was. It started subtly. At first, I heard it only in the periphery of my hearing, a soft scrape against the hardwood floor.
Ow.
Like fingernails dragging lightly, too deliberate to be the cat. I didn't have a cat. Then came the whisper, a voice, low and hesitant, calling my name. My stomach clenched. I knew it wasn't Jonah, not physically, not in the tone that belonged to him, and yet, there was a familiarity there, like hearing a song you used to know by heart, but had forgotten. I edged toward the bedroom, heart hammering, hoping that whatever it was would reveal itself or not reveal itself. That perhaps my fear was conjuring what wasn't there. But the bedroom door was closed. I didn't remember closing it. Then I felt the brush against my arm, soft, almost affectionate, yet impossibly wrong, like a shadow trying to mimic warmth. I yelped and spun, but the room was empty. The whisper came again, this time clearer, a sentence drawn in breath and hesitation. "You shouldn't be alone." I backed toward the window, pressing my hands against the glass. The city stretched beyond me, neon lights reflecting in puddles from an earlier rain, streets empty, as if the world itself had paused. And yet I could feel the presence behind me, closer now, deliberate. The kind of presence that waits for hesitation to settle before acting. I tried calling Jonah. No answer. My phone buzzed with a new message. "I've been waiting." Froze, stomach knotting. The number was unknown. I considered ignoring it. I considered throwing the phone across the room. Instead, I gripped it like a lifeline and typed back, "Who is this?" The reply was immediate. "Someone who remembers you." Cold dread coiled in my chest. Memories I hadn't touched in years flashed suddenly. The nights of reckless laughter, the nights of secret touches in dark corners. The fleeting moments of intimacy that had left me trembling in both fear and desire. I remembered faces, names, and promises whispered in the safety of darkness. And somewhere inside, I realized this thing, whatever it was, knew them too. A shadow moved across the living room wall. No, two shadows. One mimicked me perfectly. The other lingered slightly behind, blurred at the edges. My pulse raced. Impossible, I told myself, but the evidence pressed in from all sides. The air thickened. My skin prickled, hair standing on end. I backed toward the bedroom, needing the room to feel like a boundary, like a haven. The whispers grew, repeating fragments of my life back to me, fragments I hadn't shared with anyone. Do you remember this? You left me here. You ran too fast. Each word cut deeper than the last. The apartment felt alive, breathing in rhythm with my panic, the shadows stretching unnaturally toward me. I remembered something Jonah once said about grief and regret. It doesn't just weigh on you. It grows teeth. It waits. I spun toward the living room, determined to confront whatever had invaded my space. And then I saw it fully beneath the dim glow of the overhead light. A figure, tall, indistinct, but impossibly familiar. The face wasn't clear, but the posture, the small way it held its hands, the tilt of the head, it was me. And yet not me. A reflection of everything I had left behind, every choice avoided, every feeling buried in fear. I screamed. It responded with silence. Then, as if testing me, it stepped forward. My instinct was to flee, but my feet felt rooted to the floor. The figure mirrored my movements, stopping when I stopped, leaning slightly when I leaned. The apartment seemed to shrink around us, the walls pressing in, shadows curling like smoke. I wanted to speak, to assert control, but my voice caught. My mind raced for a solution, for a rational explanation, for anything to break the nightmare. I thought about turning on every light, about calling every friend, about screaming until someone answered. But the figure didn't attack. It only waited, patient, deliberate, reflecting not just my body, but my regrets, my fears, my secret longings. A tear slipped down my cheek. "What do you want from me?" I whispered. The reply came not through words, but sensation. A cold brush against my hand, soft as a lover's touch, yet wrong, alien. It pressed against my skin, leaving a trail of memories in its wake nights I hadn't let myself remember. Moments of intimacy I'd thought safe in their secrecy. The ache of love denied and love lost. My knees buckled and I collapsed onto the floor. For a long moment, the apartment was silent, except for my ragged breathing. Then the figure began to shift, blurring at the edges, dissolving and reforming, showing glimpses of people I had loved, places I had cherished, the life I had tried to bury under logic and routine. I realized then that the horror wasn't in the figure. The horror was in forgetting, in locking the doors to late not just to the apartment, but to the parts of myself I had abandoned. And as I stared at the slowly solidifying figure, I understood that surviving this night meant confronting every memory, every regret, every part of myself I had ignored. The storm outside had begun, rain drumming against the windows like impatient fingers. Lightning flashed, illuminating the figure's shape in stark relief, and in that moment, I understood the choice before me: to run and remain fractured, or to face what I had left behind and reclaim it. I took a shaky breath. I stood. "I'm not afraid anymore," I whispered, voice trembling but firm. The figure froze, mirrored my posture exactly. Then, for the first time, it smiled, small, almost imperceptible, and the warmth of recognition passed through me like sunlight breaking through clouds. The whisper softened, fading into a quiet hum of acknowledgement, and I realized that what had haunted me was not evil, it was memory, reflection, a part of my soul seeking reconciliation, and somewhere deep in my chest, hope sparked for the first time that night, the hope that I could reclaim not just my apartment, but myself. The next day, the apartment felt heavier. Sunlight streamed through the windows, bright and unforgiving. Yet the shadows clung to the corners as if reluctant to release me from the night. I tried to distract myself with chores, tidying the living room, washing dishes, even reorganizing books on the shelf. But each time I bent down or turned my back, the apartment seemed to hold its breath. That memory, the figure, the reflection of all the things I had left behind, was not gone. It had simply retreated, waiting for the quiet of night to reappear by evening. I was pacing again, heart thrumming in the familiar rhythm of anticipation and dread. I tried calling Jonah multiple times, but he was caught up at work. I didn't blame him, but a quiet panic began to settle into my chest. I could feel the presence before I even saw it, an intangible weight at the edges of the room. It wasn't malicious, yet not in a way I could. named it the way it mirrored my movements and remembered my every. Hesitation made it more terrifying than any physical threat. I took a deep breath and told myself this time would be different. I would confront it. I would face whatever I had left behind and reclaim the control I thought I had lost. I walked slowly toward the living room, hands trembling, and for the first time, I allowed my gaze to sweep the room without flinching. The shadows clung a little too tightly to the corners, and then I saw it. The figure, standing near the doorway to the hallway. Still indistinct, still eerily familiar, still not quite real. "Why are you here?" I asked aloud, voice steadier than I expected. "What do you want from me?" The figure didn't answer, but the air shifted, a pressure I could feel against my chest. My phone buzzed lightly on the counter. To finish what was started? The words made me flinch, though part of me was no longer surprised. My stomach twisted as memories of nights spent running, hiding, and pretending surfaced unbidden. The figure was not attacking me, it was reminding me of all the doors I had left unlocked in my own life, doors to intimacy, to vulnerability, to joy, and of all the times I had fled before fully stepping in. I backed toward the hallway, unsure whether to flee or to hold my ground. The figure moved forward, slow and deliberate, shadows curling unnaturally around its feet. When it stepped fully into the living room, I saw the face clearer, though still blurred at the edges, shifting between my own and faces from my past, people I had loved, people I had hurt, people I had lost. A chill raced down my spine as I realized that the figure's power came not from menace, but memory. It existed to show me what I had ignored, what I had left unlocked, and now it demanded acknowledgement. I swallowed hard. "I see you," I whispered. "I see everything I left behind. But I'm not running anymore." The figure hesitated. Soft sound, almost a sigh, seemed to fill the room. I felt it then, a strange intimacy in the presence, like standing close to someone you've known in another life. Fear was still there, yes, but beneath it, this fragile thread of understanding began to weave itself into my chest. I started, but my words faltered. I had wanted to confess, to speak aloud, the regret and longing that had been eating me alive since the night it first appeared. But the figure moved closer, not threatening, not attacking, simply mirroring my stance. I realized then that confrontation was not about force. It was about integration. I lowered myself to the couch, keeping my gaze locked on the figure. Chest tightened, and I let the memories flow, each one a ripple in the water of my consciousness. Nights I had spent hiding my love, moments of vulnerability I had refused to embrace, whispers of intimacy I had stifled out of fear. The figure absorbed it all, every shard of my fear. Every echo of joy and sorrow I had abandoned. When I finally spoke again, my voice was calm. "I can't change the past, but I can choose now. I can step forward, not run." The figure's form shimmered in response. The shadows began to relax, the air losing its oppressive weight. The apartment no longer felt like it had been shrinking. I realized something important. The figure had never wanted to harm me. It had wanted me to confront the pieces of myself I had locked away too long, pieces I had abandoned in the name of safety. A sudden tapping came from the window. My heart leaped. I spun, expecting another apparition, another memory forced into reality. Instead, it was the rain, drumming lightly against the glass, catching the city lights in tiny, sparkling diamonds. The sound was ordinary, grounding, and for the first time, the apartment felt like a safe space again. I closed my eyes and let the tension leave me slowly. Each breath was an act of reclamation, each heartbeat a reminder that I had survived, that I had acknowledged my fear and my longing without being consumed by it. The figure remained, but it no longer mirrored my movements. It simply observed, quiet, patient, no longer demanding. I realized then that survival is not about avoiding fear. It is about facing it and accepting it as part of yourself. The figure was a reflection, a warning, a guide. And now that I had chosen to see it, it had no reason to haunt me. Hours passed. Jonah finally arrived, worried and breathless, as if sensing the turmoil even from blocks away. I let him in without hesitation, feeling the first flicker of relief and trust in weeks. We sat together, talking softly, the storm outside washing over the city, but leaving the apartment serene. I told him everything about the figure, the whispers, the memories, the fear, and for the first time, I did not feel judged or weak. He held my hand and listened, letting me know that intimacy and honesty were no longer doors I had to lock away. That night, I slept with the windows open. The city hummed gently, rain pattering against the roof, and I dreamt not of shadows, but of light, warm, forgiving, full of possibility. I dreamed of love that could be reclaimed, of connections had neglected, and of courage that waited patiently to be embraced. The figure did not appear again, not that I expected it to. I had finally locked the doors in time, not against it, but for myself. Every step forward from that night felt deliberate, filled with the knowledge that fear and desire, intimacy and regret are part of the human heart, and that facing them fully is the only way to survive and thrive. The night fell heavy, pressing against the city like a damp blanket. The rain had stopped hours ago, leaving streets slick and reflecting neon like broken mirrors. I had tried to sleep, tried to convince myself that the figure, the shadow of my abandoned fears, was gone for good. But instinct doesn't rest. It waits. By 11 p.m., I knew I wasn't alone. It started with a sound, a scraping, almost imperceptible, along the wooden floor near the kitchen. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to breathe evenly, each inhalation deliberate. It's just the building settling, I told myself. Out. But I knew better. I could feel the presence before I saw it. A weight at the edge of perception, something alive and waiting. I moved slowly toward the living room, Jonah at my side now, his hand brushing mine in silent solidarity. We had decided together that tonight I wouldn't run, wouldn't flinch, wouldn't give in to fear. If the figure wanted a confrontation, it would have it, but this time, I would meet it as myself. Whole and unbroken. The figure appeared gradually, as though emerging from the very shadows of the room. Its shape solidified beneath the dim glow of the overhead light, features still familiar, still impossibly intimate. My own face stared back at me, twisted by memories, regrets, and the pieces of myself I had refused to acknowledge. And yet, the figure was more than reflection. It was alive, deliberate, and waiting for me to take the next step. "Why are you here?" I asked again, voice steady now. "I've seen you. I've acknowledged you. What else do you want from me?" It tilted its head, mirroring the question with silence. My phone buzzed, though it lay face down on the counter. "To unlock what you left behind?" The message read. I felt a pang of recognition. Sudden and sharp, remembering nights I had avoided intimacy, moments of desire I had silenced, doors I had closed in the name of safety. The figure stepped forward, and the shadows stretched unnaturally, wrapping the room in tension thick enough to choke. I clenched my fists. Fear still coiled in my chest, but now it was laced with something else: resolve. "You can't frighten me into ignoring who I am," I said. "I'm not running anymore. I see you. I accept you. All of you." The figure froze. A low hum filled the room, vibrating against the walls and floor like a living thing. Our heart pounded in my ears, but I stood firm. Jonah's hand slipped into mine, grounding me, anchoring me in the present. The figure's shape shimmered, oscillating between my reflection and the memories it carried, faces of lovers lost, whispers of secrets, nights of trembling intimacy, stifled by fear. Then, slowly, it began to move toward me. My instinct was to recoil, but I held my ground. Each step it took was measured, deliberate, echoing the rhythm of my own heartbeat. I could feel the history of myself pressing in, but I reminded myself this wasn't an attack. This was reckoning. "Show me," I said, voice soft but unwavering. "Show me what I left behind and I'll face it." The shadows rippled. The figure's hands reached out not to strike, but to brush my arms, fingertips trailing warmth I hadn't felt in years. Memories poured through me, the nights I had held someone in secret, the laughter stifled for safety, the vulnerability I had locked away. Tears ran down my cheeks. "I remember," I whispered. "I remember it all." The figure paused, tilting its head as if weighing my sincerity. The air shifted, lighter now, no longer oppressive. It moved closer, and for the first time, its features softened, becoming more like mine and less like a shadow. I realized then that it had never been a threat. It had been a mirror, a reminder, a fragment of my own soul I had abandoned in fear. I took a tentative step forward, and the figure did the same. Another step, another, and then slowly it dissipated, not into nothing, but into a soft, warm light that spread across the room. The shadows that had clung so tightly receded, folding into themselves, leaving the apartment serene and welcoming. I sank to the floor, exhausted, tears and relief mingling. Jonah knelt beside me, holding me gently. "Did it," he whispered. "You faced it. You didn't run." I nodded, chest still tight with emotion, but lighter than I had felt in months. The room felt alive in a different way, now breathing, warm, safe. The apartment was mine again, fully, and I was mine again. The doors I had left unlocked, both literal and metaphorical, were no longer gateways for fear. They were gateways for life, for intimacy, for connection. Weeks passed. The city outside my window buzzed and hummed, but inside, peace had returned. I walked home confidently at night, no longer haunted by shadows. I let Jonah's hand find mine in public, laughing without caution, loving without fear. I didn't avoid intimacy, nor did I hide my vulnerabilities. I had faced them, embraced them, and let them integrate into my life. Sometimes, when the wind rattles the windows or a shadow falls strangely across the room, I remember the figure. I remember the fear, the whispers, the reflection of all the doors I had left unlocked. And I smile, because I know I faced it, I acknowledged it, and I survived. I learned that night that fear is not the enemy, denial is. Running is.